All right, we're back.
Davis, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm a little chilly here, calling in from Canada, but excited to be departing shortly. How are you, Ed?
I'm doing great. I have to tell you, it's if there's ever a time to talk about retail, it's the holiday season. And
Too,
uh,
too true.
and just between you and me and some of our special friends online, I haven't done any holiday shopping, so this is going to be an adrenaline sport for me.
Well, maybe some of the insights from today's call will help you shop, I don't know, smarter, better, faster. But yeah, no time like now. And welcome to everyone joining us from around the globe. It's really excited to be back for another Edge Blueprints. I think we have a new logo animated. I saw the intro video. Looks like there's a bespoke version. So yeah, exciting.
Yep, we're this is it's very exciting to be here. It's the perfect time to talk about retail. And Davis, you really made a great point, which is how do we think about intelligent retail? So it's hard to imagine a time when retail didn't have more challenges in terms of supply chain, meeting customer demands, supporting affordability, making sure that operations run well. I'm really excited for our speaker today and some of the things we're going to talk about for the application of Edge AI in a retail environment.
Likewise, likewise. And I think maybe without spoiling anything, it's often having been in this technology space and like many people probably calling in, it's often from the business perspective, how loss prevention, more efficient. But I think what's unique is also adding in a consumer benefits as well to the end users of which we all are. And so I think, yeah, in the next, 58 or hour or so, 58 minutes or so, we're going to really get to dive in. And I can say I've been talking to Prakash about this for some time. So this is really, it's nice to see it come to fruition.
Oh, absolutely. Why don't we bring him in and jump right in?
Perfect. Welcome. There he is. Hey, Prakash.
Hey guys, how are you? Good morning.
Good
Likewise.
morning. We're very excited to think about retail, especially in this holiday season.
Absolutely, and I think there's no time like the present, no pun intended, but really, I think it's the perfect intersection of what's happening in AI, and the great applications we're seeing, and the holiday season and the need for intelligent retail. So I think this is perfect timing.
Excellent. I mean, I don't know if you guys were at the Taiwan show, maybe yourself, Ed. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it, but I know that the Edge Foundation's been busy globally at all sorts of events, and so it's nice that we can also bring the community to people virtually through a platform like what we have here with the live stream. So again, thanks for the folks that are joining us from all over the world. This is a great chance to not just hear it, but also engage in conversation with the creators and the practitioners of Edge AI, of which I can promise you Prakash is one. So
Thank you, Davis. Too kind.
so any announcements we need to do before we get into things here? I think we have a lot of great material to cover and time for Q&A. Anything, Pete usually when he joins us has some I don't know, hot takes to share, but I want to give that platform.
Well, yeah, Pete has a ton of things going on, and the foundation has all kinds of exciting things cooking. As you mentioned a moment ago, we have a wonderful set of things that we're putting online. We have live streams, we have the blueprints. We just launched our private beta for some Edge AI training that we can try out for our
Nice,
audience, and
nice.
we've made new announcements this week about the San Diego conference. So please take a look at when you can join us, either digitally or in person. This is really a vibrant, exciting global community. We're excited to have you be part of it, and we'd love to have you engage with us however you can.
Awesome. And maybe just one quick one from my side. So we're with the Industry Blueprints Work Group as it started. We are now officially part of the Marketing Work Group. So led by Eric Smiley, who's doing a great job there. So shout out to Eric if he's listening or here. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop doing the Blueprints live stream. So I want to definitely encourage anyone listening in or the folks in the community that if you'd like to use this platform to share what you're doing, the only requirement is that it's real, is that it's not a PhD thesis, so nothing wrong with that. But I will say this is really meant to be showing real world stuff, solving real problems. All right, well, we're 5 past the hour. Should we do it?
Let's
Let's
jump
do
right
it.
in.
Awesome. All right, well, Prakash, I take it away. The floor is yours. I know you have an introduction on yourself, and as you pull up some slides here,
Yep.
and yeah, the title of today's talk, AI on the edge, designing intelligence for the real world, specifically as we kind of alluded to in the introduction, retail, which is where the team at Inkio and Prakash are doing some exciting stuff. So if we can pull up the slides, let's get into it.
Great. Can you see my screen?
And while those are loaded, please share your comments along the way. Davis and I will be keeping an eye on those. Like I said, it's a global community. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And I know Prakash has got some great things queued up for us today.
Thanks, guys. I'll actually pick up on a line that Davis just said, which is the only requirement is that things are real, not something that's sort of built in a lab. And that's really the theme of today's chat. I want to talk about Edge AI, and over the past few years, as we've seen this meteoric rise in the AI infrastructure, Edge AI means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But really, to me, it is the amazing applications built specifically for the real world, for not behind screens and not behind, not deep in data centers, but really building on those to make an impact in the real world. So today's discussion is really about how you design that amazing intelligence, taking advantage of the infrastructure improvements and work that's going on towards delivering real value in the real world under real constraints with real people. So I'm going to talk about specifically, I'm going to pick a bit about AI in retail. The kind that, for example, you want to or you need to go into a store, a physical store, to try out what you're going to buy, touch, feel, learn more, talk to people. A lot of people, myself included, do shopping online, but there's still a good amount of shopping people do in person, and really that is a huge opportunity for Edge AI in particular. So today I'll walk you through, what the problem and what the pain is, why some of the traditional approaches fall short, and why Edge AI specifically is a great solution for the problem, and how it delivers a huge ROI for businesses. So a little bit about myself. I have been building connected devices of various kinds for over 20 years across markets from healthcare, wearables, consumer electronics, enterprise service providers, anything where devices are connected. And the common theme among all of these winning products is that they're really more than the sum of parts, whether it's the sort of bringing together the underlying models, chips, software, cloud. Really, the value that these products have brought to the companies has really been a multiplier compared to what goes into them. So I've spent a huge part of my career on mission critical systems, voice enabled devices in healthcare, enterprise class wireless. But the common theme, like I said, is reliability, which impacts outcomes for people and for businesses. So let's ground this discussion in some business reality. And like I said, the theme of today's talk is retail and AI use in retail. So retail as a whole loses billions, a lot of money, not because of products or pricing, but because businesses don't fully understand the customers. Things like what they want to buy, why they want to buy, when they want to buy. They don't have a full understanding. They have some, and they've come a long way, but really there's still a lot left to be desired. So the opportunity is really about missed moments that have promise for the business. Because guess what? For all of the glory of AI in the enterprise, there's still a huge gap in the physical spaces that we live and operate in. Those real world moments where they're like pixie dust for the business, and yet they don't get captured. So we've all lived in this kind of a moment where you walk into a store, you really want to buy something, you're looking for something, you can't find an associate to talk to you, they can never hire enough, they can't train them fast enough to tell you enough about the products, where to find it, what it does. And so what suffers fundamentally is the business's ability to engage with the customer when it matters. Okay. So, when they're on the fence about something and they really need help, they want to understand more, find out what's not obvious, what's not on the package, what's not available on, a chatbot or on the internet. And they want, to build a little bit more confidence by talking to somebody. That is the difference between getting by and winning in retail, because it's a tough business, and they look for every opportunity to improve the business. So it's the difference between just merely covering costs and truly driving profits. So if you're wondering how big this problem is, let me give you some hard facts. It's a $2 billion problem just in specialty retail or experiential retail. $2 billion a year. Why? Because 2 out of 3 shoppers who go into a store leave disappointed, not because it wasn't the right price or because they couldn't find the product, but because the assistance wasn't there when they needed, because the experience wasn't personalized. They didn't feel like they're getting a specific recommendation that meets their needs. So all of this fundamentally leads to a huge amount of what's called abandoned sales, where people come in to buy something and they walk out without buying something. And you combine this with a labor pool that is hard to train, hard to find, it's shrinking constantly. So the result is that it cripples the operation, because the efficiency of the business is impacted because there's not enough people, they can't answer enough questions, and the shopper experience, the customer experience that ultimately drives loyalty and brings people back time and again also suffers. So it's a double whammy of sorts. And if you put this in dollars and cents, that is 25% of revenue of a business that gets impacted. Either it's dollars and cents left on the table, or it's things that are actively hurting because they're, for example, stocking the wrong things because they don't know what people want, or they can't point people to the right merchandise in time. Okay, so the solution here is lies in real-time intelligence that Edge AI can bring. Okay, because they can understand customers and how to engage with them in real time while they're in the store. And it has to happen fundamentally very naturally, not after they leave the store, go home and get an email 3 days later asking how the experience was. That's not engaging. Engaging, which results in real business outcome, which is powered by the Edge AI capability, is what happens in the store while people are there, while engaging. And it's the ability to convert those into a higher revenue. So the experience fundamentally has to be natural. It has to feel like there's a virtual store associate who's helping them, not like a laggy response because there's a bad network, or that there's lots of gap time and lots of silences, awkward moments. That's not natural. You want to feel like you're actually talking to somebody that's a virtual version of an associate who's really well versed in the business. And the experience has to respect privacy, because nobody wants to feel like somebody's spying on them or eavesdropping. They want to know that what they're saying is, kept in confidence. And the combination here is really an opportunity for Edge AI specifically, because Edge AI lets their decisions to happen locally, which means that the shopper privacy is respected greatly, and the responsiveness is so natural, the latency is so fast, less than a second, like you were talking to a person, that it really drives that impact. It lets the business engage with people in the moment, and give them that level of personalization that ultimately helps them out. So now that we talked about the challenge, let's talk about why Edge AI is a natural fit for solving it. Because we need that real-time intelligence, like I just said, about fast, responsive, and reliable. So the fundamental reality of Edge AI is you feel like you're balancing on a bunch of ping pong balls in the middle of the ocean. Things are very unstable. You're getting pulled in different directions as you're trying to design your product. There's constraints, that are all in conflict with each other. And that's why I like to point out that Edge AI really succeeds or fails more at a system and a product level, not at sort of the underlying component or model level. And because so starting with, for example, in the real world, you're operating with a very severely constrained compute budget and a very, very strained memory size. Okay, you don't have a ton of memory. You have a very, very small thermal budget. It's not like a GPU in a data center where you have liquid cooling and you're able to just run it. You have a very, very constrained operating condition that you have to meet in order for the product to be successful. And in a lot of cases, you need to be battery operated. And even if it is plugged in, you need to still have the efficiency. So it's cool, it's small, it's easy to use. So I'll sum it up by saying, Mr. Physics isn't really on your side. It's not making life easy because those small form factors dictate very, very tight power envelopes and a very, very hard set of constraints around compute horsepower and memory. So the key, I would say, the first insight I'll offer you today is don't start with a gigantic model and try and squeeze it down. Start with understanding what the constraints of the business and what tasks you're trying to accomplish, and then you design very task specific models for that on device execution. So for example, for speech recognition, use like a moonshine class ASR model with TF Lite and intake quantization, because it gives you that reliable transcription in very noisy environments without burning a whole lot of power. Okay. If you want to develop semantic understanding, use compact embedding models, like for example, a 6-layer mini-LM. Don't try and use a gigantic end-to-end sequence model. For intent detection, for example, use a very lightweight Distilbert classifier. And more importantly, share the same encoder between the embedding model so that you can minimize that memory footprint. So the key here is to understand what those small ensemble of models can do for you, and picking the right model which takes advantage of that very constrained set of resources you have. So when it comes to voice specifically, your solution needs to be accurate all the time and everywhere. Okay. So in retail, for example, you need to achieve 95% accuracy in very, very loud noise environments, 70 plus dBA environments, which means you need to have a noise reduction pipeline to keep the word error rate significantly low, like under like probably 7 to 9%, in order to have proper transcription, even in those noisy conditions. And your architecture needs to have sort of very fast failover, because nobody wants to wait for that gap and that lag of reaching the cloud for every conversation. You need to be able to have a failover mechanism so you're doing some of that on the device, again, for Edge AI specifically. So think that you're driving for sub 1 second latency for any conversations, because 2 seconds of lag, and there's actually clear statistics on this, 2 seconds of lag in response means it's double the number of abandoned sales. And 3 seconds is a non-starter. People just say this isn't working and they walk away. The next constraint to keep in mind is around privacy and security. And I call those out separately because a lot of people, they sort of mix it up. But fundamentally, these are table stakes. These are not features. This is a must-have. Okay. So first is around shopper privacy, because people simply do not like any kind of surveillance. They barely put up with video surveillance at the entrance and exits. They sure don't want to feel like somebody's watching over them. So this is where having some on-device processing becomes a real secret weapon, because it lets the solution operate without recording conversations, without retaining personal data, no voice prints, no profiling, none of that personal data retention. And this is really important. It truly makes it so that the business is comfortable adopting and deploying the solution on a mass to improve the shopper experience. And for the business security, business data security, it has to be truly enterprise grade. So think multi-tenant architecture, segregated data, and zero trust architecture, so that every interaction, it has to be authenticated against a set of credentials. Because the last thing you want is for somebody to walk in the store, pick up, and get deep insights into proprietary business data. So you need to have enterprise grade security, which is sort of cordoned off and segmented. So when you design with these kinds of constraints in mind, the architecture starts to crystallize and it starts to become somewhat clear, because fundamentally this is about efficient model pipelines and the ability to adapt to different verticals very quickly, and that agentic execution flow. So if you optimize at the pipeline level, you get, like Edge AI promises, locally controlled latency and very, very predictable low inference costs. So at Inkio, as I mentioned earlier, we're taking the approach of breaking down the model architecture into an ensemble of very small, very efficient models. Okay? So this architecture lets it be truly, resilient to network conditions, because the intelligence is local. The decisions and interactions don't really depend on round trip latency to the cloud. And the system, when it needs to, degrades very gracefully instead of falling abruptly. People don't feel like they're talking to a virtual associate one moment and talking to the wall the next. They feel like, oh, it's just a virtual copy of an associate. And it just like sometimes the associate might take a moment to pause, it's the same experience for them. So let me give you some specific examples around the kind of models we've used. Like I mentioned, for the ASR, we use a Moonshine class model with TensorFlow and intake quantization. We also have text-to-speech using Pico Voice Orca. We have what's called a query classifier, which handles essentially intent handling, routing, and safety, all safety altogether. And for that, we use a Distilbert fine-tuned or Distilbert class model. So that it's much lower footprint than taking a gigantic model and trying to squeeze it in. And for the embedding model, we use a 2 billion parameter model, so that that's Infor quantized, so that we're able to fit it within the tight memory footprint of the edge device. So in general, what we're doing is that the closer we get to the user, the greater the focus on the user experience with things like latency, privacy, and the ability to operate sort of off a unreliable network when we need to. So these are what make Edge AI deployable at scale in real specialty retail environments. So the approach is sort of four-pronged. The first is it's an architecture that's focused on ultra-low latency responses, but independent of network conditions. It feels truly immersive and natural. Next, a ensemble of models that is focused on both efficiency and speed of deployment. We want to be able to take models and very quickly adapt it to the specific use case, to the specific vertical, to the specific business very quickly. And the ability to do that quickly while maintaining the architecture is key. And the platform must enable sort of real-time intelligence for the business. So it has to generate and analyze these insights very quickly, not sort of the perfect moment after, as I like to talk about. And finally, picking an ecosystem partner whom we can leverage across the entire task space. Because then the difference between intelligence looking good in lab versus intelligence that's working in the real world becomes little. You're able to prove out things, you're able to add capabilities, you're able to add features all together. Okay, so we have been validating our solution with a number of different businesses in the retail space. And what's truly standout and compelling is how consistent the feedback is. Whether we talk to regional managers, front lines, executives, they all fundamentally point out that there is an amazing value that's being delivered thanks to this edge solution in creating sort of a closed loop between the business, the shopper, and sort of the enterprise, sort of all together. This is a very tight loop that didn't exist before, that's actively delivering value and ROI for the business. So I'll end with saying, the Edge AI isn't just about intelligence, but it's about pulling the decision making close to human interaction, which is ultimately, I believe, going to be driving the true wider scale adoption of AI. AI is everywhere today, but I think the closer it comes to making a difference in human interaction and human experiences every day, I think the appreciation only increases. So thank you.
Awesome. Gosh, thanks, man, for going through that. I know you timed the presentation yesterday. I think you were spot on what your estimate was. So nice work there. There's a
Okay.
couple of questions coming in. I'll definitely encourage everyone to keep doing so. We have plenty of
Love it.
time to navigate that. Ed, do you want to go first? I know you have a couple of questions you want to ask Prakash, more kind of executive business side. I tend to think for the technical side. How do you want to do this?
I think we should just jump in. You covered a ton of ground. And by the way, hats off. We've had a lot of speakers who included the family pet in the presentation, but training yours to demonstrate complex audio environment, that's impressive. That's going the extra mile. I got to give you that. I
I
know,
haven't found
Davis.
the mute button of the dog yet, so I'll let you know. I'm working on it.
No, presentations are always better with the pet, always.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Yeah.
We have a couple things we want to talk about. Let me first just start with we spend a lot of time with CEOs who are being asked by their board of directors to address the problems that you're highlighting here. So it's a known problem, it's a known opportunity. And a little bit to the conversation Davis and I were having, how does a business decision maker get started? That's more than a technical question. It's a business question for how they manage risk, but also start to test the upside of these opportunities. So based on what you saw with those three examples you gave us, what do the CEOs say to their board to get started here?
So what we're seeing is an interesting trend where the greater adoption of AI comes not necessarily from creating new use cases or inventing new workflows, but showing how using AI improves outcomes uh, in a specific workflow or an existing workflow. So let me give you an example. Training retail associates is something that businesses take very seriously. And on average, it takes anywhere from a few weeks in best case for certain businesses to a few years. Somebody like, for example, who needs to be trained on a large wine store and understanding and developing tasting notes takes years. So what we're seeing is that when it's presented as this is a product or this is a solution that cuts down our training time and is able to let our associates be more knowledgeable and respond better, then the CEO decision makers start to get more traction with the board because they can see the value immediately. Because not only are they saying instead of just going out and mass hiring more people, they're using who they already have and improving the shopper experience, and improving the efficiency of the business. So what we see in general is that that's the most effective technique to take existing workflows and apply what we're providing to them.
Okay.
Nice.
We actually have a bunch of follow-up questions for that. Davis, do you want to pick up real
Yeah,
quick?
certainly. I think maybe if you can pull up the questions from the audience here. I think there's one that kind of kicks off some nice discussion. So from Benjamin Cohen, it says, can you talk a little bit more about specific hardware selection? There's lots of components existing, but how do you choose the right integrated platform to deliver this value? Are they custom built integrated units, off the shelf systems? And yeah, go please. I think this is a great first question.
Yeah. So the approach we've taken is, and I'd encourage everyone to take a similar approach. Fundamentally, you need to look at it on two vectors. One is, instead of just being driven by sort of generalized specs like, oh, it's got these many tops or it has these many cores, you need to evaluate it specifically for the tasks. Like, for example, how's it doing with an ASR model? Not just sort of general transformer model performance, but look specifically as to how it does for the ASR model you chose, or how's it doing for the text to speech. Does it have the right, when you're choosing hardware and chips, you're looking at some general stuff like, power and integration, these things. But I think the additional filter I'd apply is how it's doing for the specific sub models or small models that I talked about. But the other thing, as you're doing that evaluation, the other vector here is to be able to evaluate it with real world data. Don't, for example, for speech transcription, it's one thing to say something is able to transcribe with 95% accuracy. The question, like I pointed out in this case, would be how is it doing when there is 70 plus dBA of noise in the background, like my dog just barking, for example? How does it do? So, look at the level, your usual criteria, but apply the specificity of the smaller models and the real world data that it's going to operate in. And I think
Yeah.
that is your key to finding, the right solution on the endpoint.
I couldn't agree more. I hope everyone was listening, because that was a very informed take on how you guys clearly have selected your hardware, and others can do. Maybe just a quick follow-up on that, because there's definitely other questions to get to. What's the role in this case of neural processing units at the edge for these types of system designs? Are they a must-have? Are they overrated? As you pointed out, sticker tops is one thing, but real inferences per second for the model you actually want to run is really what you should pay attention to, which you have to test. So how do you think about NPUs as you go deeper into this domain?
Well, I think having some level of NPU is a must. I don't, dream of choosing something which is not able to, because fundamentally, the problem statement I just delivered today's discussion to is, edge intelligence, which means you need to have some level of, smarts on the edge. You need to be able to run some level of model. So without an NPU, I think it's a non-starter, because, and I think this crowd is, understands very well. So I would definitely not go down the path of just using sort of a generalized CPU. Now, the capability of what you have at hand on the edge in terms of how many taps, that is something which I just spoke to. How do you optimize by using small purpose-built models to evaluate the capability?
Nice. No, I like that. So maybe kind of, if it's okay with you, Ed, let's go to this
Yeah.
one from Gordon. Yeah, awesome. Because I think this is, again, we talk about real world impact. You talked about this specific industry. This question, I think, really goes into that. So the question is from Gordon Kerr. It says, what would be a reasonable investment or expected cost into the customer cycle? Is there a cost elimination inherent in, I guess, your solution? So thanks, Gordon. Prakash, what do you think?
So when we talk about investment into the customer cycle, I think they're really asking what is the sort of go-to-market cost? What's the cost of developing and deploying the solution? Am I understanding this right, or is there a different angle you want me to take at it?
No, maybe if the person asking the question can clarify, but I think they're asking about how do you. My way I interpret it was the adoption, right? So if someone sees what you guys are offering and thinks, hey, this is resonating and need it, how do they go about, procuring this, for lack of a better word, and what does that look like in terms of cost benefit?
Well, I can specifically talk about, one of the approaches we've taken is to, find more, find the right model for the task. And so what that opens up for us is the ability to leverage the vast ecosystem of models that are already there, instead of creating and specifically training new models, which is typically where there's a lot of cost involved and a lot of time. We're taking and leveraging, we are training them specifically, or we are sort of domain training them, but it's a much smaller undertaking than developing a whole model from scratch. And so, we're taking the approach of, making it a much faster, lower cost adoption cycle for the customer. because we're leveraging what's out there. Now, there's a bunch of other places where there's sort of, as I talked about in our architecture, there's a other bunch of other places where applying the secret sauce and really bringing the value to deliver. But we're not sort of going back to scratch and saying let's develop a whatever massive llama type model. We're definitely going down that path.
Yeah, I think that seems very rational. But I appreciate Gordon's question here. I think it speaks maybe to your slide with your 6 examples in terms of, how do you help them think about what's a reasonable expected return on the investment that they're taking,
Yeah,
especially for a pilot program.
yeah, and I think, when it comes to the return on investment, I think it is definitely, I wouldn't even say vertical specific, it is business specific, because even within retail, or if you took a sub segment, something like, for example, wine stores, each business has, a specific value, a specific set of metrics where they're trying to move the needle, right? And for some, it's about educating their customers and offering a better product. For some, it's about personalizing the recommendation. For some, it's about, sort of driving the right partnerships with wineries on the back end. It just really depends. And so the beauty of what we're doing here is basically to take this vast amount of data that's being otherwise missed, which is from the customer, and essentially reflecting it back to the business saying, hey, this is what your customers are looking for. This is what they want. This is what they like. This is what they want to see.
Okay, so in many ways, it's probably circling back to your greater than the sum of the parts comments before, which is
Exactly.
it's as much about bringing together the right technical solutions as it is engaging with the decision makers around what's right for their business.
Absolutely. And so, yeah.
So what about this next question from Asif Ansari? I think you did touch on this in your presentation. Any recommendations on models for Edge AI in retail environment? I think that actually, as you just said, it's not maybe vertical specific, but actually business specific. I mean, there's certainly models that appeal better to compute and profile, profile constraints, for example. But fair question, and I know that you definitely have some insight here.
Yeah, I do, and I think what I would encourage you to think about is not a single answer, right? I think you need to think carefully about what is the specific task within your solution and what is the model that's right for it. So again, I go back to speech recognition or transcription, for example. You want to pick the correct one that can withstand, like that has great noise performance, or great transcription performance under noise as well. So it's not one big model, but a bunch of small models. And I'd encourage you to start listing out, what tasks you're looking for it to do, and then pick the exact right one for that one. And having an architecture like we do, which lets you sort of, for lack of a better word, plug and play different models and evaluate them is very important, because if you have to redo your entire architecture each time you try a different model, that's not going to end very well.
That's a great point. And since you're talking about tasks, maybe Prasada's question is quite apt. Can you comment on agentic AI?
So I think agentic AI, we think of it as more on the outcome of this intelligence, because the key here that we're doing is to take some of these interactions, capture and develop insights, but to truly make them actionable. There's one way, which is to say you can present it as sort of insights for the business. But what we see, and this goes back to your question of what is driving adoption with CEOs and boards, it's when you have the ability to autonomously, using an AI agent, drive outcomes like, for example, changing pricing on the fly, or adjusting inventory on the fly, or impacting the supply chain on the fly, using that kind of an agentic approach. That is powerful. And so what we're doing is sort of connecting start to finish, starting with the customer all the way to the business outcome all together using a combination of voice-driven approach and agentic AI.
Nice. I think as these systems become more complex and we add more, let's just say roughly intelligence, including models, including silicon to the edge, there's a bit of a natural question that emerges, which I think Asif has also asked about here. And this is not, again, just specific to retail. It's actually a lot of industries that need to answer this question. The question is, how about any tips for real-time versus background overnight analysis of data in retail? And I think I'd even add to that, where what about the interplay between the two, right? Are there scenarios where the real time is actually affected by data that might have been figured out overnight, let's say? You have to think of it as a continuous stream of information. That's what the world is. But you guys, in some sense, are the filter for the business.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, it definitely has to be it definitely has to be a combination, right? Because for the business facing data, like creating those insights, like using those agentic or like using those AI agents, that stuff that can happen at a slower cadence. I want to stay away from using overnight or background, but it's more at a slower cadence, I would say. But for the user focused or the part that touches the user, it truly has to be real time. And so the tip I would offer is, if there is a human interaction involved in your product, you want to make that as close to real time. If it's something that is, affecting a business outcome, you have a little bit slower cadence you can afford.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, Ed, no, please.
I was just going to say, I think Davis just asked a really interesting question, and hats off to Asif as well. I wonder if Varun's question follows neatly after that, which is, how do you make sure this is smoothly integrated? So you have asynchronous processes, you have synchronous processes, you're trying to deliver in real time. How do you make sure you have a smooth customer experience as you bring together all of these potential technologies?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna, the risk of sounding like a broken record. I think the answer is not monolithic. It's different. I think for the problem of the user experience, like having this conversational experience, it's about finding the right models on the edge. For operating off the right data, the business's data, instead of just sort of picking up what's out there, in different open sources. It's about having the right API integration with the right systems so that you're able to integrate quickly and smoothly into the existing CRM systems, pricing systems, inventory, supply chain systems. It's about having the right integration through the right APIs, so that you can actively so that you can interact from the edge to the business on a still real time but albeit slower cadence.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to summarize this. I think there's a question that we can come back to that was earlier in the chat, which was from Raghu Gundam, which is, how can we try this, basically? So I think clearly what you're talking about has hit home with some folks. And again, the questions are the lifeblood of this interaction. So thank you everyone and for contributing and adding to here. How can someone experience what you've been talking about, Prakash?
So we are in the physical AI space, and so to answer Raghu's specific question, if we have an app, we don't at this moment. We are focused more on creating a physical presence in order to enable that truly immersive and very fast response, which doesn't, which is truly network independent, which is truly, able to have a consistent experience no matter where, which store, who's trying it, in order to control that end user experience that the business can ultimately leverage. We've created like a custom or purpose built hardware. we remain open to potentially looking at app-based solutions in the future, but the customer feedback right now is that the user experience is what they're driving for, which is really driving the need for purpose-built hardware.
Nice. Ed, yeah, I think we can bring up one more here from the audience. Asif, thanks for your contribution. So I'll read it out. So I really like this question, actually, and it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about with my NXP hat, but also my other hat. So Asif, how to ensure that the models you have selected have longevity and evolve? Once you've trained on your domain, how can you really take advantage on the upgrade of the base model, which I guess in some ways asking about retraining or fine tuning or really on device learning, which is another outlet which the chip industry is certainly excited about.
Yeah, so I think this really depends on your model pipeline specifically. In our case, for example, we have the ability to our architecture is such and our model pipeline is such that we're able to pull in upgrades. As there's new releases of the base model. But again, remember, we don't actually, hold on to the model. What we're doing is simply fine tuning it with the right model pipeline and being able to deliver and push some of that onto the device itself. So it really is very specific to the way you've developed the model pipeline.
Yes, and I think it's not really the cost of iteration or the speed of iteration really becomes the way that which you can hedge, and that's built into the pipeline as you refer to it. You could also think of it as like a CI/CD, continuous integration,
Exactly.
deployment, which at the edge is interesting domain, especially when it comes to models. I'll kind of I want to I think Ed and we all want to hear more about what you think of the future and where this industry is going. But I do have to ask you, what is your solution today, or what is your proposed solution on how to handle like bad inputs or like malicious actors where they might have not the intended purpose of your device, either it's abuse of inputs, or I mean, this is just it's an unfortunate reality of any edge systems is you're interacting in an unpredictable world and you have to design for that. How do you guys do so?
I think this really goes towards the security framework I was talking to, right? I think on some token, we look at AI agents as a combination of a huge advancement, a huge way to bring these solutions to fruition, but they also open up vectors as threats for all of these systems. And so I think having a combination of this right safety guardrails at the start and the interactions. If somebody picked up a device, for example, and just starts saying, "Oh, tell me about X, Y, and Z data," and that's protected data, having the right safety guardrails in place is a key piece. But also having the right safety or security measures to have that enterprise grade security like we do. It's a combination of both of these ultimately that makes it ironclad.
So I'm so glad Davis brought that up, because it's inevitable we have to think about these things. We started off talking about the fundamental challenge. We talked about the opportunity to solve some of the enabling hardware, the risks to be managed.
Yeah.
But if you're looking ahead over the next few years, what do CIOs, what do decision makers need to keep in mind when we think about this domain over the next 2 or 3 years? What's the most important thing they should be thinking about now?
I think I'll answer it a couple of different ways. I think fundamentally, CIOs and sort of customers in general are looking at it from the lens of sort of these foundational models and chatbots, and sort of looking at what what kind of general improvement or general advantage they can get. What I'd encourage folks to think, and what we're hearing some of this, is this concept that the edge really is a very different playground than frontier models or foundational models. It's very different, and so I think whether it's CIOs, whether it's CEOs, whether it's boards, they're looking at it from a different lens that, hey, what's happening in that realm that can benefit the business? And I think bringing that to fruition is exactly where we stand.
Yeah, I think with the time we have, like 5 minutes left here, if there's burning questions, please put them in there. But Prakash, we can probably in the follow-up, these streams are recorded, so that'll live on the YouTube channel and everything.
Love it.
Yeah, I think honestly, Ed, I think that I'm trying to digest all the information that we've received today, and I want to thank the audience again for really keeping this interactive. These are always a special environment where we can really, as a group, dig deeper. So nothing further from my side, honestly, and yeah, this was quite informative, I have to say.
Thank you. Fantastic questions, by the way.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Prakash. This was amazing. And to
Yeah.
Davis's point, it's the beginning of the conversation. We can
Yes.
follow up online. This is an incredibly exciting field.
Great.
Absolutely.
Good.
With that, I would encourage everyone to visit the streams that we'll be playing in case you couldn't make the live stream of this. It'll be published on YouTube. We also have quite a large number of events coming up that'll be available on the Edge AI Foundation website, from the newly launched Save Your Seat for the San Diego event, along with Ice Edge Bangalore, CES, and Embedded World. I love this community because we have so much going on and the tech is evolving so quickly. It's just a joy to talk to people like you, Prakash, and Davis today, and to talk about where we're going to be heading over the next few years.
Yep. Like Edge AI, the foundation is everywhere, always, all at once. So you guys have no shortage of events, and having been in this ecosystem for a few years now, I definitely encourage people to experience it. Where you can, if you can. Yeah, it sounds like folks are very appreciative of your time, Prakash, based on the comments. Yeah, no further questions.
Just final thing, thank you so much. First to the Edge AI Foundation. I think this has been amazing. Davis and I chat from time to time, but nothing like truly engaging with some amazing minds like on today's call. And thank you to the foundation for the opportunity and really highlighting what I believe is a really compelling set of use cases, starting with retail.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ed.
Well, go to your holiday shopping, everyone. You heard it from here.